Adding and subtracting rational expressions. Again, when we subtract these fractions, we need to find a common denominator between these two denominators. So the first thing always is we want to factor anything that we can. So we're going to factor this numerator, or denominator I should say, and I get an x plus 3 times an x plus 2 in my denominator. And then this denominator is going to be factored to be x minus 4 times an x plus 3. Alright, so a little bit trickier here. How would we find our lowest common denominator now? Remember, a denominator has to be the same for both fractions. So this expression has an x plus 3 and an x plus 2 in it, and this expression has an x minus 4 and an x plus 3. So in order for these denominators to be the same, we want to include the factor that's missing from the other fraction. So if you take a look here, what are we missing in this denominator? We're missing the x minus 4. What are we missing in this denominator? We're missing the x plus 2. So your lowest common denominator when you start to work with binomial denominators is simply going to be all of the common binomials. So our lowest common denominator has to be an x plus 3, an x plus 2, and an x minus 4. That's going to be what our denominator is. So if we want this as our denominator, you have to ask yourself, well, what do I need to multiply these two by in order to get this? I would have to multiply it by the x minus 4. So I'm going to multiply this whole fraction by the x minus 4. So this would be 4 times x minus 4 in my numerator. Minus, again, here is my denominator. What would I have to multiply this denominator by in order to create this denominator? Well, I would have to multiply these two values by the x plus 2. So I'm going to take this guy and multiply the whole thing by an x plus 2. So this is going to be minus 5 times an x plus 2. So now I can subtract these by writing it all over the same denominator. So I have a 4 bracket x minus 4 minus 5 bracket x plus 2 all over x plus 3 times x plus 2 times an x minus 4. Now I want to expand and collect like terms and simplify my numerator. So I get a 4x minus 16 minus a 5x minus 10 all over the same denominator. I'm now going to collect my like terms, so I get a negative x minus 26 all over x plus 3, x plus 2, and then x minus 4. So then I'm going to look in my numerator. If I factor out a negative 1, is that going to help me cancel anything in my denominator? And no, it is not. So this would be my final answer. I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, what we did forget to talk about was our non-permissible values. And my non-permissible values for this expression would be x cannot equal a negative 3, a negative 2, and a positive 4. And that is how you add and subtract rational expressions.